I hope my journey will inspire others who may not come from a normal background and might not have the privilege of going to university and higher education, because none of that I had. And everything I've learned and every job I've ever been able to get was through passion, and showing that passion and also backing it up with focus and determination, and spending a lot of time researching what I was learning and listening to people who know more than me, and knowing when to be quiet and knowing when to speak. It's a fine balance as well.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Craft Podcast, where Michael and I interview experts of various fields to learn about their discipline and how they strive towards mastery. We love talking to people who are passionate enough to master something. And we've each been asking curious questions of these craftspeople our entire lives. But we want to share that with others. The interviews we hold are to the point, informative, and fun. You will love all of them. So please subscribe to the channel and like the video if you love our interviews. Let's get right into it. Michael, who's with us today?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Today we are joined by Amelia Player, an artist, AI researcher, and a tech enthusiast. With a background in motion graphics, graphic designs, 2D and 3D modeling, and also deep into the gaming industry, she co-founded Prompt Muse with her brother Alex. Prompt Muse is the teaching platform that bridges the gap between theoretical knowledge of AI and its practical through step-by-step tutorials, best practices for both beginners and experienced users in the AI industry. And latest news and opinions on this industry as well. So with the mission to democratize the AI education, Amelia is passionate about empowering individuals and organizations to harness the potential of AI through hands-on learning and experiential training. So Amelia is a master in her disciplines, and we are honored to have her on the show. Amelia, welcome to the Craft Podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me. And don't tell me ChatGPT wrote that.
No, that was all old school, handwritten.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you for an amazing introduction, and yeah, you nailed it. So yeah.
But before, AI, you weren't doing AI related things forever. You started out your career in gaming. We did some LinkedIn stalking and found, all these gushing reviews about you from people you've worked with in the past and game companies when you were doing game art. And one of the things that stuck out to me is that you didn't just stick with one area of game art, but you learned all the different subdisciplines from, concepting and many others that, maybe you can introduce us to, and then, tell us how kind of your journey to mastering that field.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, I hope my journey will inspire others who may not come from a normal background and might not have the privilege of going to university and higher education, because none of that I had. And everything I've learned and every job I've ever been able to get was through passion, and showing that passion and also backing it up with focus and determination, and spending a lot of time researching what I was learning and listening to people who know more than me, and knowing when to be quiet and knowing when to speak. It's a fine balance as well. So my CV is just absolutely everywhere. I actually started my journey not knowing what I wanted to do at school. I was awful at school. My GCSEs probably spelt a swear word. It was in the UK, you get an F and a U and a C. And it was bad. And I came out of school education feeling so dejected. And my grammar and spelling is as bad as it is when I was at school. It hasn't improved one bit. But I knew I had to get a skill to survive in this world. And I knew that from a young age. And I actually went to college and did beauty therapy. But in fact, I didn't have enough GCSEs to be allowed to do beauty therapy. So I ended up doing hair for a year to get myself into a beauty therapy course. I don't understand the logic of that. And that was my first insight into education, that the processes, it just didn't seem to make any sense to me. But I knew I had to get skills, so I did beauty therapy. But when I was doing that beauty therapy course, I discovered I had free access to a library and computers. And I came from, I'll talk about it in a bit later, I grew up with computer games. I was the ultimate person who played a lot of computer games. So I was obviously attracted to the computers and the internet and the library. I'm quite old as well, nearly 40. And, well, not that old, but in the grand scheme of things, middle age, I would say. And, you know, there was a lot of books as well about 3D and graphic design. And so when I was doing this beauty therapy course, I sort of fell in love with graphic design and 3D. And I finished the course and I didn't do anything beauty therapy related. In fact, I wanted to do marketing for a company. And I kind of just winged it into the business by just saying, yeah, I can do that. Of course I can. And I ended up almost being graphic designer within the company, because I just say, let me do it for you. And back then as well, it was easier to get free software, like Photoshop, 3D Studio Max. You could have access to it, or if you knew where to look. I don't promote that whatsoever, but it's very different nowadays, where you have to have serial keys, and those, you know, it wasn't easier to hijack those as it used to be back in the days. So I had access to absolutely every graphical application in this marketing job, and I learned everything. And I realized I could learn software very quickly. And I didn't learn very well in the classroom, but I did learn by teaching myself and working out problems. So if I needed to find a solution, if then somebody said, could you make this video for us to do, I would do it. And I would use 3D Studio Max, I would use Photoshop, I'd use PaintShop Pro, which was an old program back in the day. And I would learn this software, basically being paid for my education in 3D. And the company loved it because they loved what I did for them. But also I felt this was such a better way of learning, because it's actual practical use of software. I signed myself up at the time. I used all my money to do an ICT course. I think it was at £2,000. It was a lot of money back then for my job. And I went into this course and it was full of people who just didn't want to learn. And the teacher said, well, you need to use Access to build this database in order to do that. It just, it was so, you have to use this software and learn this. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be better if you use this? No, that's not part of the syllabus. And again, that was another taste of, I just don't belong in that formal setting. So I actually wasted all my money. And I think it probably about 2 weeks into doing that course that I dropped out. Wow. So not great. But I realized I could learn more actually working and putting a practical use to the software. And then after that job, I could have stayed and moved to London, but I met my husband now, who worked there as well, and he lived in the middle of the lands, the Midlands in the UK. And so I had to move up here, and I thought, well, it's a good opportunity to try and get a job with what I've learned. With no experience at all, I applied for a 3D architectural company and just was honest with him. I said, look, I love doing 3D and I can learn it very quickly, and I have, and this is my portfolio, this is what I've got. Give me a chance, an opportunity, and hopefully, you'll get rewarded. You can pay me less than everybody else, doesn't matter. Just give me a chance. And I was very lucky. And to any viewers as well, knock on doors, always knock on people's doors, because even if they say no, go to the next door and be honest about what you know, and be open to so many. You will get so many opportunities that way. And unfortunately, I lost my job due to the recession within the housing market because it was based on housing, but I had enough time in that business to learn 3D really well, photorealistic 3D, and from the guys around me in that team as well. You know, everyone taught a little bit here and a little bit there. Then I started up my first of many businesses after that, because I knew I wanted to carry on with 3D, but the job market was just completely dead at the moment, at that time. And I started doing 3D visualization for businesses, and just carried on, just freelancing until I found this job for a game artist in a city that was near me. And again, I applied for it. I was very honest. I said, I don't know anything about the game industry. I have no background experience, but I am so willing to learn. And I stayed there for 6 years and became a lead artist. And everyone used to say, well, what university, where did you go? What did you learn? And I'd say, I didn't. I learned it here. I learned it from the people around me. I learned it from Google, YouTube. I learned it. I didn't learn anything in an educational environment. It just wasn't suitable for me, and how my mind processes information. And I think there's a lot of people like that in the world who feel lost because they haven't found their thing, or might have thought they found their thing and then realized it wasn't. And I think taking a word from Silicon Valley, I love, when they say pivot, they have to pivot the whole business, everything they've done up to that point, they have to change. And it's knowing how often to do that and when to do it. Don't do it too often. Be consistent, but know when you've come to the dead end to something that's not going to fulfill your mind and your spirit. And 3D has always run through from the beginning, finding it in the library and learning the software. It's been there, always there. And so I loved my job at the games company, like making 3D assets, working with developers, working with other artists. It was such a fantastic job. And I actually started another role as a lead artist in another game studio. And unfortunately, my dad passed away quite suddenly. And he ran an online software business. And his last words were pretty much, can you look after this? So I was just like, why did you say that? Now I'm going to have to. I did. The directors of that business were so kind to me. They let me bring my laptop in and run his software business as well as do my job. But it got to the point where it's just too much. I had to make a decision, and they were just so good to me. And I just said, I just can't. I've got to, take this on, because I feel so that because he's asked me to do that, I have to. And one thing I realized, it wasn't my passion and it was his passion. And so I automated that business, his software business, as much as I could, and also tried to obviously earn money out of it, which I did and still am, which is great. And it has been essential to what I've created now with my brother. So it's funded it essentially and funds my daily living. It's not much, but it keeps it all going. So I still run the software business, and I did help my dad when he was build that business. So I knew it inside out, but I took it over, automated it. It could have been far better than it was if I was passionate about it, but I realized that I really wasn't. So essentially using it as a bit of like a cash cow, but keeping it afloat, keeping the customers happy as well. So the last 5 years, it's been juggling that. And then I had room to start another business, and that's where the Creative Mum started, which was creating stock images and selling them. I again wanted another automated business, and I realized I could just draw and license the artwork, and then draw again and license that artwork, and so that built pretty quickly and did really well.
Well, if we could linger on gaming a little bit longer, Well, I mean, first of all, like, there's no way, I guess, a LinkedIn profile could do much justice to the story you just told, because it's just amazing, and it shows so much tenacity that, well, LinkedIn's made for showing off what brands you associate yourself with, not passion, showing real passion and tenacity for discipline. So I'm really, really glad you shared that story, and I hope you write memoirs someday, because I'm sure there's a million stories within that.
I actually left home at 15. So I was sleeping on my friend's sofa. Wow. When I did the beauty therapy course and ICT, I actually didn't have a home at that time. My parents had divorced, and you go through those teenage years, and my brother did it too. Not just me. And there's a lot more in depth there. There's a lot of going on, and that's why I want to share that with anybody watching this, that I wasn't given any opportunity, and I had to work for everything, and it has been tough. It has not been easy at all, but I've always been, okay, I just need to get enough money. I don't need to be rich. I just need to get enough money to keep doing what I want to keep doing. So, yeah.
I mean, that's really inspirational.